I never thought I'd see him again. Not after high school, not after all the years of whispered insults and shoved lockers, but there he was, Mark, the guy who had spent my teenage years making me feel small, standing smugly at the bar, a drink in his hand and that same cocky smirk on his face. Life had been cruelly ironic. I'd spent the last 10 years rebuilding myself after high school, learning who I was, learning to embrace being the weird kid everyone laughed at. I thought I'd left him behind, forgotten him. Turns out, he hadn't forgotten me, or at least, that's what it looked like when I saw him laughing a little too closely with my wife, Sarah. I froze. For a second, my mind refused to believe it. No way, I muttered under my breath, gripping the edge of the counter so tight my knuckles turned white. Sarah, noticing me, gave me that reassuring smile she always did, one that could calm storms, but tonight it felt like a dagger. The way Mark looked at her, leaning in with his hand brushing her arm, that familiarity, that arrogance, it made something inside me coil with a mix of fury and disbelief. We'd been married for 5 years and I loved Sarah more than anything. She was the calm to my chaos, the warmth I carried home after the worst days, the one person who never treated me like my past mattered. And yet here he was, my high school tormentor, acting like he had a claim over her, like I was invisible. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to keep my voice calm. Sarah, I said, my tone sharper than I intended, we need to leave. She raised an eyebrow, slightly confused. What? It's just a party? No, I said, my chest tightening, it's not just a party. He's here. And that's when the memories came flooding back. The taunts in the hallways, the relentless teasing, the whispers in the cafeteria. I remembered how powerless I had felt, how everyone had laughed at my expense. But that was the past. I had grown stronger, smarter, more patient. And yet, nothing could have prepared me for seeing him lean over my wife and laugh like he owned her attention. That night I didn't lose my cool. Not yet. I stayed silent, kept my composure, watched the conversation, observed him. And that's when the plan started forming, not a plan of immediate revenge but a slow, calculated reclaiming of my dignity. Because I realized something crucial, this wasn't just about high school anymore. This was about respect, boundaries, and showing him that the weird kid he thought he broke, the one he mocked relentlessly, was not just intact, he was unbreakable. Hours passed. Drinks were poured, conversations meandered, laughter echoed. I could see the subtle shift in Sarah's posture, the polite yet distant engagement with him. She was loyal, of course, but even she seemed momentarily caught in the tension. I knew I had to act, but not like the reckless kid I once was. No shouting, no public confrontation. That would have satisfied him, given him the rush of perceived victory. I wasn't going to give him that. Instead, I started by weaving myself into the moments, the subtle reclaiming of presence. I laughed with friends, shared stories, casually but confidently, just enough to draw Sarah's attention back to me, to remind everyone, including Mark, that I had a life, a persona, a history he couldn't erase. And then came the pivot, a conversation he overheard, not directed at him but charged with implications. You know, I said, it's funny how some people spend years trying to define you by their insecurities, and then life gives them the shock of realizing you were always ahead, always building, always stronger than they imagined. I watched him twitch, a flicker of recognition, maybe even a hint of fear. He had underestimated me just as he had in high school. The arrogance was still there, but the edge was gone. I was no longer the target, I was the force he hadn't accounted for.